Nasir gripped his drumsticks so tightly his knuckles turned white. The band room smelled like metal and varnish, but it felt colder than usual, maybe because Mr. Harrington's voice had just sliced through the air like a sneer. "We already have drummers. Good ones." Laughter flickered from a few students. They didn't know that Nasir had been raised on rhythm, taught by a jazz legend with hands like lightning. But none of that mattered now. The only beat he could hear was the one pounding in his chest, faster, louder, as he realized this wasn't just an audition. This was a test, play or disappear. Quick question before we start. Are you someone who watches these at night, or are you catching this one on your morning scroll? Let us know in the comments. You're going to want to stick around because what happens at the end? Yeah, it's worth it. Subscribe if you love a good jaw-drop moment. Nasir gripped his backpack straps tightly as he walked through the doors of Lincoln Academy. The hallways seemed too bright, too loud, too white. At 13, being the new kid was hard enough. Being one of the only black students made Nasir feel like he was walking around with a spotlight on him. "Just breathe," he whispered to himself, remembering his grandfather's words. Grandpa James wasn't just any grandfather. He was James Lightning Hands Wilson, one of the greatest jazz drummers who ever lived. The rhythms Nasir could create came from those same hands that had taught him since he was 5. But nobody here knew that. Here, he was just the quiet new kid trying to disappear. Nasir paused at the bandroom door. The familiar smell of valve oil and reed cases pulled him in like a magnet. Through the window, he saw students unpacking instruments, laughing together like old friends. His fingers twitched at his sides, muscle memory from thousands of hours on the drums. "Are you joining, or just going to stand there all day?" A sharp voice cut through Nasir's thoughts. Mr. Harrington, the band director, stood in the doorway. His crisp button-down shirt and perfectly combed hair matched his cold, appraising stare. "Ah, I play drums," Nasir said, his voice barely audible. Mr. Harrington's eyebrow arched. "We have drummers. Good ones." His eyes swept over Nasir, lingering just long enough to make clear what he wasn't saying. "But auditions are Friday if you insist." Nasir nodded and stepped back. As Mr. Harrington turned away, Nasir caught his dismissive smirk. He'd seen that look before at his old school. The look that said, "You don't belong here." That night, Nasir's sticks flew across his practice pad. Each hit harder than the last. His grandfather watched from the doorway of their small apartment. "Something troubling you, son?" Grandpa James asked. Nasir's hand slowed. "The band director at school. He already decided about me before hearing a single note." His grandfather sat down slowly, his aged hands bearing calluses from decades holding drumsticks. "Music speaks when words fail, Nasir. Your drums tell your truth. What if no one wants to hear it?" Nasir asked. Grandpa smiled. "The right people always listen." He placed his weathered hand on Nasir's shoulder. "Your grandmother used to say, 'They'll never see you coming. Show them who you are, not who they think you are.'" Nasir nodded, feeling the weight of his grandfather's legacy. Tomorrow was the audition. He would play, even if Mr. Harrington had already written him off. The drums were his voice. And maybe, just maybe, he could make them hear him. Friday arrived with a knot in Nasir's stomach that tightened with each passing class. When the final bell rang, he walked to the band room clutching his drumsticks, the ones Grandpa James had given him on his 10th birthday. The band room was half full. Several students lounged in chairs, instruments in hand. In the center stood a drum kit, looking both inviting and terrifying under the harsh fluorescent lights. Mr. Harrington sat at his desk, not bothering to look up when Nasir entered. "Sign the sheet and wait your turn," he said flatly. Nasir was last on the list. He watched as other students performed, Mr. Harrington offering curt nods or sharp critiques. A tall boy with blonde hair finished a flashy drum solo, complete with unnecessary stick twirls. "Excellent work, Trevor," Mr. Harrington said, actually smiling. "That's our standard here at Lincoln." Trevor shot Nasir a smug look as he returned to his seat. Finally, Mr. Harrington called, "Nasir Wilson." Nasir approached the drum kit, adjusting the C height. The room fell silent. He could feel everyone watching, judging. He raised his sticks, took a deep breath, and froze. The silence stretched painfully. His heart hammered in his chest, drowning out all other sounds. "Today, Mr. Wilson," Mr. Harrington said, checking his watch. Nasir tried again, but managed only a weak, stumbling pattern before his hands betrayed him completely. Mr. Harrington's laugh cut through the room. "Well, I suppose we can't all have natural rhythm, can we?" Several students snickered. Nasir's cheeks burned. "Is that really all you've got?" Mr. Harrington asked, his voice dripping with mockery. A girl with a flute spoke up. "But Mr. Harrington, I heard him practicing yesterday after school. He was amazing." Mr. Harrington's smile vanished. He turned to Nasir with narrowed eyes. "Is that so? Well then, Mr. Wilson." "Surprise me." He gestured dramatically toward the drums. "Or get lost. Your choice." The room became so quiet Nasir could hear the clock ticking. 20 pairs of eyes bored into him. Trevor and his friends exchanged knowing smirks. Nasir gripped his grandfather's drumsticks tighter. He remembered Grandpa's words, "Your drums tell your truth." With his heart hammering against his ribs, Nasir made his choice. He would play. But as he raised his sticks, he knew this wasn't just about making the band anymore. This was about being seen. Really seen. Nasir closed his eyes and found the rhythm inside himself. Not the complicated solos his grandfather had taught him, but something simpler, safer. His sticks touched the snare drum. Steady, controlled, basic. He opened his eyes. Mr. Harrington was watching with a surprised expression that quickly shifted to something unreadable. Nasir kept playing, adding a few kick drum patterns, but holding back everything else. His grandfather would have called it playing small, but right now small felt safer than nothing. "That's adequate," Mr. Harrington said when Nasir finished. "You'll take the back row, secondary percussion. Simple beats only." His eyes narrowed. "Nothing fancy." "Understood." Nasir nodded, relief mixing with disappointment. He'd made the band, but only barely. "What a joke," Trevor muttered as Nasir passed. Guess they needed to fill a quota. The next 2 weeks of rehearsals were exercises in restraint. Nasir played exactly what was written, basic quarter notes and occasional eighth note patterns. Nothing more. "Too loud, Wilson." Mr. Harrington would snap, even when others played louder. "Too rushed," he'd say, though Nasir's timing was perfect. After one particularly frustrating rehearsal, the flute player who had spoken up during auditions approached him. "I'm Lisa," she said. "And that was ridiculous." "You're the best drummer we have." "Doesn't seem to matter," Nasir replied. "It's not you," Lisa explained. "Harrington's desperate. We haven't won the state band competition in 5 years. The principal told him this is his last chance." Lisa became Nasir's first friend at Lincoln, sitting with him at lunch, explaining the school's social landscape. She also revealed more about Mr. Harrington. "He's always harder on certain students," she said carefully. "Especially black kids." Nasir finished. Lisa nodded. Last year's saxophone player quit because of him. One afternoon, when only Lisa remained after practice, Nasir couldn't contain himself anymore. He sat at the drums and let go, playing a complex jazz pattern that would have made his grandfather proud. Lisa's eyes widened. "That's what I heard that day. Why don't you play like that during rehearsal?" "Harrington would kick me out," Nasir said. "Or maybe he'd have to recognize how good you are," Lisa challenged. The next day, Nasir added a small fill during rehearsal, nothing flashy, just a simple embellishment. A few heads turned. Mr. Harrington stopped mid-direction. "What was that, Wilson?" he demanded. "Just a fill, sir. To transition between sections. The music doesn't call for your interpretation," Mr. Harrington said coldly. "Play what's written or don't play at all." As Nasir packed up his sticks after rehearsal, he noticed a framed photo he hadn't seen before. A younger Mr. Harrington holding a drumming trophy. Standing to his side, partly cropped from the image but unmistakable, was Nasir's grandfather. Their paths had crossed before. And suddenly, Nasir understood everything. "Your grandfather knew Mr. Harrington?" Lisa asked as they walked home after practice. Nasir nodded, still processing the discovery. They must have competed against each other years ago. Grandpa never mentioned him, though. Maybe there's a reason, Lisa said. That evening, Nasir carefully approached his grandfather, who was cooking dinner. Grandpa, did you ever know a drummer named Harrington? Richard Harrington. The wooden spoon paused mid-stir. Where did you hear that name? He's my band director, Nasir said. I saw an old picture with you in it. Grandpa James sighed deeply. Ricky Harrington. Yes, I knew him. He turned down the stove. We were both young drummers coming up in the 70s. He was technically skilled, but played without heart. Always by the book. Did something happen between you? We competed at the Midwest Jazz Festival in 76. I won. He didn't take it well. Grandpa's eyes grew distant. Said some things no man should say to another. Haven't spoken since. The next day, Nasir noticed more students watching him during rehearsal. Small mistakes were happening in other sections, but Mr. Harrington only criticized him. Wilson, can you count a 4? It's not complicated, he shouted when Nasir's timing was flawless. After rehearsal, Trevor cornered Nasir in the instrument storage room. Harrington's riding you hard. Nasir shrugged, trying to move past. But I heard you practicing alone yesterday, Trevor continued, blocking the doorway. You're holding back during rehearsals. Why? Does it matter? Trevor lowered his voice. The showcase is next week. Harrington's job depends on us doing well at state after that. A strange smile crossed his face. He really doesn't like you. I noticed, Nasir said dryly. Just giving you the facts, Trevor said, finally stepping aside. Be smart about how you use them. That Friday, Mr. Harrington announced a pre-competition showcase for parents and school officials. This determines our final lineup for state, he explained. Everyone needs to be perfect. During practice, Nasir kept strictly to the written music, despite feeling the rhythm calling for more. When his part called for a simple repeated pattern, his mind filled with the complex variations his grandfather had taught him. Lisa passed him a note, play your way at showcase. Make him see. The showcase arrived. Parents filled the auditorium. Principal Wilson sat front row. Nasir spotted his grandfather slipping in the back door. 3 songs in, during their jazz number, Nasir's focus slipped. For just 8 bars, his hands took over, adding flourishes and ghost notes that transformed the pedestrian beat into something alive. The other band members looked up in surprise. Some smiled. The audience stirred. Mr. Harrington's baton faltered. When the piece ended, his face was rigid with anger. Excellent work, everyone, he said tightly. 5-minute break. As students dispersed, he approached Nasir. My office. Now, behind the closed door, Mr. Harrington's friendly facade vanished. You deliberately defied my instructions. I just played what felt right, Nasir replied. What felt right? Mr. Harrington laughed coldly. This isn't some freestyle jam session. This is serious music. My grandfather says music should breathe. Your grandfather, Mr. Harrington cut in, his voice suddenly ice. James Wilson. I should have known. He leaned closer. Listen carefully. You'll stick to the simple beats a child could play, or you're out. Understood. As Nasir left the office, he realized something chilling. This wasn't just about music anymore. This was personal. The auditorium buzzed with conversation as the band reassembled after the break. Nasir's hands trembled slightly as he took his place behind the drums. Mr. Harrington's threat echoed in his mind, but something else burned stronger, the brief moment when the music had felt alive beneath his hands. As Mr. Harrington raised his baton for the next piece, Nasir caught Lisa's encouraging nod from the flute section. He took a deep breath and played exactly as written, flat, lifeless, and perfect according to Harrington's standards. After the showcase, Nasir found his grandfather waiting outside. You're holding back, son, Grandpa James said softly. I have to, Nasir replied. He'll kick me out if I don't. His grandfather's eyes narrowed. That doesn't sound like music education to me. That sounds like something else entirely. The following Monday, rumors spread through school about a special guest attending the state competition that weekend. Maxwell Thompson is coming, Lisa whispered excitedly during lunch. Who's that? Nasir asked. Only the director of Westridge Music Academy, Trevor interrupted, sitting down uninvited. They say he's scouting for scholarship students. Nasir felt a flicker of hope that quickly died. Doesn't matter for me. Harrington will make sure I'm invisible. Trevor leaned forward. Heard Harrington talking to the other judges this morning. Called you a charity case, he was forced to include. Said not to expect much. Nasir's appetite vanished. Why are you telling me this? Because Trevor said, I want to win. And after what I heard you play at Showcase, we don't win with you playing tambourine parts on a drum kit. That afternoon, Nasir stayed late to practice alone, pouring his frustration into the drums. The patterns grew more complex, his hands flying across the kit in rhythms his grandfather had taught him. Lost in the music, he didn't notice Mr. Harrington watching from the doorway until the man spoke. Interesting technique, he said coldly. James taught you well. Nasir stopped abruptly. You never mentioned you knew my grandfather. Ancient history. Mr. Harrington stepped closer. You know, I've reviewed the competition pieces and decided to make some changes to the percussion parts. He handed Nasir new sheet music. Nasir scanned it. The drum parts had been completely rewritten, filled with awkward rhythms and nearly impossible transitions. Learn it by Saturday, Mr. Harrington said with a thin smile. This isn't even playable, Nasir protested. Then I guess you'll fail. Mr. Harrington's mask dropped completely. Just like your grandfather should have all those years ago. What happened between you two? Mr. Harrington's laugh was bitter. He took what should have been mine. My spot in the Midwest All-Stars, my scholarship, my future. His eyes hardened. Now his precious grandson shows up in my band. I don't believe in coincidences. I didn't even know. It doesn't matter. Mr. Harrington cut him off. Saturday, you'll play exactly this, or you'll prove what I've told everyone about you. As he left, Nasir realized with growing dread, Mr. Harrington had deliberately set him up to fail on the biggest stage possible. That night, Nasir noticed his grandfather making a phone call, speaking in hushed tones. When asked, Grandpa James simply said, sometimes old friends need to be reminded of old promises. The competition was 2 days away, and Nasir faced an impossible choice. Play impossible music and fail, or play his way and face Harrington's wrath. Saturday morning arrived with gray skies and drizzling rain. The bus ride to the state competition was tense, with Mr. Harrington reviewing last-minute instructions. When he reached Nasir, his smile didn't reach his eyes. Remember your new part, Wilson. Every note is written. The Westridge Concert Hall was massive, with soaring ceilings and impeccable acoustics. As Lincoln Academy set up on stage for their sound check, Nasir's stomach churned. He'd practiced the impossible part for hours, but it remained awkward and unplayable at competition tempo. Lisa squeezed his shoulder. You've got this, she whispered, though her eyes betrayed her doubt. From the wings, Nasir spotted a familiar figure. His grandfather had arrived. But Grandpa James wasn't alone. Beside him stood a distinguished man in a tailored suit, his silver hair contrasting with dark skin. The man surveyed the stage with experienced eyes, pausing when he saw Nasir. Who's that with your grandfather? Lisa asked. Before Nasir could answer, Trevor appeared. That's Maxwell Thompson. The scout. His eyes widened. Your grandfather knows Maxwell Thompson? The revelation hit Nasir like a thunderbolt. The hushed phone call. The old friend. But why hadn't Grandpa mentioned this connection? Mr. Harrington noticed the visitors and froze mid-instruction. His face drained of color as he recognized both men. He quickly composed himself and clapped sharply. Place is everyone. Remember, this determines our standing for the next 3 years. The competition began. Lincoln Academy was scheduled 5th out of 12 schools. As they waited backstage, Nasir tried to calm his racing heart. The impossible drum part loomed before him. When their turn came, Mr. Harrington led them on stage with confident strides. The lights dimmed, the audience quieted. Nasir took his place behind the drums, acutely aware of Maxwell Thompson watching from the third row. The first piece went smoothly, a classical arrangement with minimal percussion. Then came the jazz number with a revised drum part. Mr. Harrington raised his bat, and the band began. Nasir followed the impossible score, his rhythms immediately sounding awkward against the other instruments. Wrong notes emerged as he struggled through the intentionally unplayable passages. Mr. Harrington turned slightly, a satisfied smirk playing at his lips. In the audience, Nasir saw his grandfather lean forward, brow furrowed in concern. Beside him, Maxwell Thompson was making notes. By the end of the piece, Nasir's confidence was shattered. He had played exactly as written and sounded terrible, just as Mr. Harrington had planned. As they exited the stage, Mr. Harrington placed a hand on Nasir's shoulder. "Disappointing," he said, loud enough for others to hear. "But exactly what I expected." In the green room, Nasir found his grandfather waiting. "I failed," he whispered. "No," Grandpa James said firmly. "You were sabotaged." He glanced toward where Maxwell Thompson stood talking with competition officials. Maxwell recognized what happened immediately. "You know him." "We played together for 20 years, his grandfather replied. "In the very group Harrington was rejected from." He paused. "Not for his playing, though that was mediocre. For his character." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I wanted to see if things had changed." Grandpa James shook his head sadly. "They haven't." But now Maxwell has seen for himself. Nasir stared at his hands. "It doesn't matter now. I've ruined our chances. You have one more piece to play," his grandfather reminded him, reaching into his jacket. "And I think it's time you use these." He handed Nasir a worn leather case. Inside lay a pair of drumsticks Nasir had never seen before. Vintage hickory with brass bands around a grip, engraved with his grandfather's name. "Your legend sticks," Nasir whispered. The ones his grandfather had used when playing with jazz greats. Sometimes, Grandpa James said, playing by the rules means letting the wrong people write them. With the special sticks in hand, Nasir faced a decision that would change everything. The green room buzzed with tension. Lincoln Academy had placed 6th after the first 2 performances, not enough to qualify for finals unless their last piece impressed the judges. Mr. Harrington paced nervously, snapping at anyone who spoke above a whisper. Nasir sat alone, his grandfather's legendary drumsticks heavy in his hands. The brass bands caught the light, revealing names etched alongside his grandfather's: Elvin Jones, Art Blakey, Max Roach, giants who had played alongside James Wilson. Lisa slid into the seat beside him. "Those look special." "They are," Nasir replied. "My grandfather used these when he played with the greats." "You need to use them," she said firmly. "Play your way in the final piece." Nasir shook his head. "Harrington will fail me." "Maybe." She hesitated. "But I overheard something. Maxwell Thompson isn't just here as a scout. He's the head judge." The realization hit like a thunderbolt. If his grandfather's old friend was the head judge, then perhaps... Mr. Harrington's voice cut through his thoughts. 5 minutes, everyone. Remember, this is our last chance. As the band gathered their instruments, Trevor approached Nasir. For once, his usual smirk was gone. "That drum part was sabotage," he said quietly. "Even I could see that. Why do you care?" Nasir asked. "Because I want to win." Trevor's honesty was surprising. "And we don't win with you playing that garbage." Nasir tightened his grip on his grandfather's sticks. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything," Trevor replied. "I'm just saying if someone decided to ignore that mess and play what works." He shrugged and walked away. As they took the stage for their final piece, a complex arrangement of Duke Ellington's "Don't Mean a Thing," Nasir felt time slow down. In the audience, he saw his grandfather and Maxwell Thompson watching intently. In his hands, the legend's sticks seemed to pulse with their own energy. Mr. Harrington turned to the band, his expression severe. "Remember your parts. Exactly as written." His eyes lingered on Nasir with unmistakable warning. The choice crystallized in Nasir's mind. He could play the intentionally broken part and fail publicly, confirming Mr. Harrington's prejudice. Or he could play with the truth and soul his grandfather had taught him, risking everything but honoring the music. As the first notes began, Nasir made his decision. The legend's sticks felt right in his hands. Whatever happened next, he would play his truth. Mr. Harrington raised his baton, and Lincoln Academy began their final performance. As the introduction swelled, Nasir felt something shift inside him, fear giving way to clarity. The moment his entrance arrived, time seemed to stand still. His grandfather leaned forward in his seat. Maxwell Thompson raised an eyebrow. Mr. Harrington turned slightly, expecting to hear failure. Instead, Nasir took a deep breath and let the rhythm flow. The first beats Nasir played were straight from the page, exactly what Mr. Harrington expected. The band director's tense shoulders relaxed slightly as he conducted, thinking his plan was working. Then, as the first chorus approached, Nasir began to transform. His posture straightened. His grip on the legend's stick shifted. And when the chorus hit, everything changed. Instead of the awkward, impossible rhythms Mr. Harrington had written, Nasir unleashed what had been building inside him all year. His hands became a blur, crafting perfectly timed fills that complemented, rather than competed, with the melody. The legend's sticks danced across the drums, drawing sounds that made the audience lean forward in their seats. Mr. Harrington's baton faltered. He shot a furious glance at Nasir, but it was too late. The music had taken over. In the front row, Maxwell Thompson's expression shifted from polite interest to focused attention. Beside him, Grandpa James nodded in silent approval, a smile spreading across his weathered face. The other band members felt the change immediately. The saxophone swung harder. The brass section punched their notes with renewed confidence. Lisa on flute added flourishes she'd been too nervous to try before. The entire ensemble lifted, carried by Nasir's unstoppable groove. Mr. Harrington, realizing he'd lost control, frantically tried to rein in the performance with sharp gestures and glares. But one by one, the students chose to follow Nasir's lead instead. Halfway through, Nasir launched into a drum break that silenced the hall. His hands moved with inherited wisdom, each stroke telling the story of his grandfather's legacy and his own journey. The techniques were advanced, brush sweeps, ghost notes, rim shots, all flowing together in a conversation between past and present. When the band rejoined, the energy was electric. Students who had barely acknowledged Nasir's existence were now playing off his rhythms, finding joy in the music perhaps for the first time. In the audience, someone stood up. Then another person. By the final crescendo, the entire hall was on their feet. Mr. Harrington's face had transformed from anger to shock to something like fear. As the final notes rang out, thunderous applause erupted. Several judges were nodding appreciatively. Maxwell Thompson was writing rapidly in his notebook. What was that? Mr. Harrington hissed as they took their bows. You deliberately disobeyed my instructions. I played music, Nasir replied simply, still gripping the legend's sticks. As they exited the stage, students from other schools stopped to compliment Nasir. Teachers approached with questions about his technique. Through it all, Mr. Harrington stood frozen, watching his authority dissolve. In the green room, the Lincoln Academy band erupted in excited chatter. That was incredible, Lisa exclaimed. Where did you learn to play like that? Others asked. Even Trevor seemed genuinely impressed. Why did you hide this all year? Before Nasir could answer, Maxwell Thompson entered the room, followed by Grandpa James. The students fell silent immediately. Mr. Harrington, Maxwell said, his deep voice commanding attention. It's been many years. Mr. Harrington's attempt at a welcoming smile looked more like a grimace. Maxwell. What a surprise. Not really, Maxwell replied coolly. When James called about his grandson's situation, I made a point to see for myself. He turned to Nasir. Young man, your performance honored your grandfather's legacy. I haven't heard drumming with that much heart in years. The room grew tense as Mr. Harrington's face darkened. This was a competition with rules. Wilson deliberately ignored my arrangement. Did he? Maxwell raised an eyebrow. I reviewed your score during intermission. Those drum parts were unplayable by design. His voice hardened. The same tactics you used decades ago won't work today. The student band members exchanged shocked glances as the truth emerged. Finals announcements in 15 minutes, came a voice over the intercom. As everyone filed out toward the main hall, Maxwell kept his gaze fixed on Mr. Harrington. Some things never change, Richard. But the music always tells the truth. For the first time all day, Nasir felt the weight lift from his shoulders. Whatever happened next, he had played his truth. And finally, everyone had heard it. The main hall buzzed with tension as 12 school bands waited for results. Lincoln Academy students huddled together, still riding the high of their final performance. Mr. Harrington stood apart, his usual confidence replaced by rigid anxiety. In third place, announced the head judge, Westlake High School. Applause filled the room as Westlake's band director accepted their trophy. In second place, the judge continued, Morton Academy. Nasir's heart pounded. Only first place remained. Lincoln Academy hadn't placed at state in 5 years. After everything that had happened, could they actually win? And the state champion with performance that redefined excellence in high school jazz. The room held its collective breath. Lincoln Academy. The Lincoln students erupted in disbelief and joy. Lisa grabbed Nasir's arm, jumping up and down. Even Trevor pumped his fist in the air. Through it all, Mr. Harrington stood motionless, his face unreadable. As Lincoln's name was called, Maxwell Thompson stepped forward with the championship trophy. Would the band director and percussion section leader please come forward? Mr. Harrington moved mechanically to the stage, followed by a stunned Nasir. This was a remarkable turnaround, Maxwell said, handing over the trophy. Particularly the innovative drum arrangements in your final piece. His emphasis on innovative made Mr. Harrington flinch visibly. After the ceremony, as students celebrated, Maxwell approached Nasir. I'd like a word with you and your grandfather, if you don't mind. They followed him to a quiet corner where Grandpa James waited. Nasir, Maxwell began, what you demonstrated today wasn't just technical skill. It was courage and musical integrity. Westridge Music Academy would be honored to offer you a full scholarship. Nasir's breath caught. A scholarship? But I'm only in 8th grade. For when you're ready, Maxwell clarified. We don't want talent like yours going anywhere else. As this sank in, Principal Wilson approached, her expression serious. Mr. Harrington has made some disturbing accusations about today's performance. I imagine he has, Maxwell replied smoothly. Perhaps he should also explain why he deliberately sabotaged a student's part. The principal's eyes widened. Is this true? Before anyone could answer, Mr. Harrington himself appeared, his face ashen. Maxwell, I can explain. Actually, Maxwell interrupted, I believe we've heard enough explanations from you. He turned to Principal Wilson. Richard and I have history. 30 years ago, he was rejected from the Midwest All-Stars, not for his playing, but for altering another musician's sheet music before an audition. He nodded toward Grandpa James. James was that musician. Despite the sabotage, James still outplayed everyone. Sound familiar? Principal Wilson's expression hardened. Mr. Harrington, we'll discuss this in my office on Monday. As she walked away, Mr. Harrington's facade crumbled. You've ruined me, he said to Nasir. No, Nasir replied quietly. You did that yourself. Later, as the excitement wound down, the Lincoln Academy band gathered their instruments. The trophy gleamed under the lights, a symbol of what they'd accomplished together. What happens now? Lisa asked as she packed her flute. A review of Mr. Harrington's position, Trevor answered. My dad's on the school board. He got 3 calls already. Nasir carefully placed his grandfather's legend sticks in their case. I just wanted to play drums. And now you will, Grandpa James said, appearing beside him. On your terms. As they left the hall, Maxwell Thompson approached one last time. James, what you say we give these kids a proper finale? He gestured to a small stage in the lobby where a piano stood. Grandpa James smiled. Like old times. Minutes later, Nasir found himself seated at a drum kit beside his grandfather, who held a pair of brushes. Maxwell took his place at the piano. Without a word, they began to play, 3 generations of musicians speaking the universal language of jazz. Students and parents gathered around, witnessing the impromptu master class. Mr. Harrington watched from a distance, finally seeing what he'd tried so hard to suppress. Music in its purest form, unbound by prejudice or fear. As Nasir played alongside his grandfather, matching him beat for beat, the circle felt complete. The legend's sticks had found their new hands. The rhythm continued. And Nasir Wilson, once the invisible new kid, had become impossible to ignore. That brings the story to a close. Nasir didn't just fight to be heard, he fought to be seen for who he truly was. In a world that tried to mute his rhythm, he found his voice in the very beats meant to break him. What stayed with me most was how he played not to prove himself, but to protect his truth. And in that moment, the music stopped belonging to the band. It belonged to him. Was Nasir right to go against the rules in the end? Let's talk about it in the comments. You stayed through the whole thing, so I know this hit different. Don't miss out, subscribe now, and check out another story that's just as powerful.